Halloween Nightmare, my wife's shocking betrayal. "Haley, are you almost ready?" My husband called from downstairs. "The party starts in 30 minutes. I smiled to myself. He's so sweet. He can't stand not showing up on time, but this was a house party. No one shows up on time. I can't tell you how many times we showed up first. It was a little embarrassing. People teased us about it. It was all a lot of fun, but still. I took my time getting dressed. After all, it was a Halloween party. How often do you get to play dress-up? I was trying to remember the last time we went to a Halloween party. It was the year before the pandemic. Has it really been 3 years? Wow. I was excited not only because it was a Halloween party, but because we had recently moved and hadn't seen some of these friends in forever. Now we lived in a rural area about 20 minutes away. I had always dreamed of a big house in the country, and this is what I got. I looked at myself in the mirror. This year's theme was mischievous witches and wizards. It made me laugh. Why was Halloween an occasion for fun? Not that I'm complaining. In my 40s, I still kept myself in pretty good shape. The kids had taken some damage, but at 175 centimeters, 120 pounds, and medium-length red hair, I could still turn heads. I was wearing a short black dress with long sleeves. The skirt was black taffeta, and it had a zipper in the back. P.I. was wearing black and orange thigh-length stockings and black-heeled shoes. The witch's hat was down. I went a little overboard with the makeup. I don't know why, but I assumed witches put their own makeup on. The dress was low-cut, and you could see the lace of my C-cup bra and the large cleavage. I opted for black panties with a full tie. After all, the dress was very short. One last turn, and I headed downstairs to my husband. As I walked down the stairs, I saw the face of Jim, my husband, light up. Truth be told, he always liked it when I got a little naked. We played it up when we were alone, meaning I always, shall we say, dressed up to impress when we went on vacation or whatever. Jim liked it when other men looked at me. Truth be told, I liked it too, so a short dress or bikini was pretty fun. When we were alone, the game went further. Jim liked the idea of showing me off. In our fantasies, he would undress me in front of a group of men, or I would be undressed by some stranger. There were many variations, and all of them left me naked in front of a group of men who then, dealt with me. This game turned me on as much as it did Jim. It was all fun. So why not go along with it? Walking down the stairs, I eyed Jim. He was dressed like a sorcerer, in a dated tuxedo with a gold medallion. I had to admit that at 6 foot 180 pounds, he had a bit of a fatherly body, but I liked him anyway. He smiled at me, looked me over from head to toe, and then said with a laugh, "No underwear." I laughed. "I'm not showing enough skin?" "There's no such thing as enough," he replied. I wondered for a moment. Why, I'd worn short dresses before. Maybe not as short, but I could be more careful. "Fine," I snorted. I slid my hands under my dress and hooked my panties, pulling them off my hips and stepping out of them. I held them out to him. "Happy?" I asked. Turning around, I headed upstairs to put on my underwear. "I think it's perfect," he smirked. "Oh?" I snorted. "You'd like me to walk around like that, wouldn't you?" Yes," he said a little shyly. My mind clicked, and I felt a slight chill as my inner vixen kicked in. "Let's go," I heard myself say. Jim looked at the panties in his hand. He slung them over his shoulder and said with a surprised look on his face, "Okay, let's go." We jumped into the car. I could feel the seat pressing against my body. I was starting to feel a little awkward, but also a little aroused. As we drove down the road, Jim put his hand on my thigh between my stockings and the hem of my dress. The touch made a spark run through my body. I felt good about the sensation. The drive into town was a long country road. It was dark, but it was easy to drive. We drove on. A light showed up ahead. That's strange, I thought. At the same time, Jim said, "I wonder what that light is." That was weird. The road into town was pretty empty. There wasn't a single house on the stretch we were traveling on. The only thing there was an old shabby bar. It had been closed for years and was already starting to show its emptiness and falling apart. Suddenly, our car stalled. All the lights on the dashboard flashed, and then the check engine light came on. We looked at each other, but kept driving. The lights ahead got brighter and brighter as we got closer. When we pulled up to the bar, it appeared to be open. The lights were on and music was playing. We looked at each other. "They must have renovated the place," Jim said. "They must have," I agreed. There was no way I could figure out what had happened. I drove that way and didn't see any work being done, but it was clearly underway. Just as we started to drive by, the car stalled. We pulled into an empty parking lot. I thought it was odd that there were a lot of people in the bar, but no cars. When we pulled over, Jim said, "I'll call roadside assistance." Jim pulled out his cell phone. "No service." "Really?" I asked. "I've always had full service here." I pulled out my phone and checked. I didn't have service either. How odd, I thought. "Well," Jim suggested, "why don't we go inside and see if they'll let us call from their phone? We can have a drink while we wait for the tow truck." "It's not like we have a choice," I said, trying to sound reassuring. We got out of the car. As I got out of the car, I felt the cool air on my body. It was strangely arousing. As we got to the door, the music got louder. The murmur of voices could be heard from inside. It looked like there were a lot of people here. We opened the door and stepped inside. The hall was full of people, and as we entered, everyone fell silent. Everyone seemed to be in costume. They turned around and looked at us. Jim began. "Our car broke down and we don't have cell service. Can we use your phone?" After a pause that seemed interminable, a man dressed in a vampire costume stepped forward. "Good evening," he said, in the voice of a vampire from a movie. We looked at each other. He laughed. "Just kidding," he said in a normal voice. Then, "Sorry, the phone's not working." "Can someone give us a ride into town?" asked Jim. I thought of the empty parking lot. The man looked at us perplexed. "A ride?" Then he looked out the door into the parking lot. "Oh, give me a ride," he said, as if in thought. "Oh, go ahead and drive. I'm sorry, we got on the, bus. Yeah. They'll be back to pick us up." "Oh, thanks," Jim said. "When will he be back?" "Oh, soon. Soon," the man said. Jim looked at me. "Well, we can wait in the car," he said. We saw looks run around the room. "Nonsense," the man said. "Come on in and have a drink. My name is Daniel. Join our party." "That's very kind of you," I said. At that moment, someone pressed a glass into my hands. It was a Cape Codder. I took a sip. Cape Codder was my favorite drink. It didn't occur to me to ask how they knew that. They handed Jim a beer, Blue Moon again, his favorite. Come in," Daniel said, pushing us into the room. The music was still playing. "Come over to the bar, have a seat." As we walked through the crowd of people, I started to feel claustrophobic. Daniel was introducing people, too many names to memorize. The music kind of drowned out his voice. I looked at the people. They were all in costumes, but the costumes were a little off. A witch with a demon tail, a teddy bear with vampire fangs, a tiger with no eyes and a scar on his face, a policewoman with horns. I noticed that all the women looked great. They all seemed tall and strongly built. They were all dressed in very revealing tight costumes. All of them were dancing. The lights were dimmed and the music was loud. A tall, red-haired woman dressed like a rabbit walked up and asked Jim to dance. More accurately, it was a rabbit of sorts. She was wearing a pink thong with a cotton ponytail, a pink tank top that was cropped and didn't quite cover her breasts, pink stiletto shoes, and bunny ears. Oddly enough, her whole body was painted on, and her skin and face had turned a dark red. and she had horns. Even her eyes were red to make the pupils red with slits like a cat. I wondered how she made the horns, since I couldn't see any joints where they were connected. "Do you mind if he dances with me?" she asked me, as if to ask me. "Would you?" She took Jim by the tie and sort of led him into the dancing crowd. I tried to watch him, but then Daniel interrupted me. "I like your suit," he said. "Thanks," I replied. He smiled at me. He had a very warm smile that made me feel good. I felt safe next to him. I started to relax. I'm sure the drink didn't hurt. Daniel started talking to me. He asked me about where we were going, and I told him about the party and how we ended up where we did. "Well, aren't we lucky?" He smiled. "Now you can join our party." Our conversation flowed easily, and the music continued to play. I felt myself getting comfortable and swayed to the beat. "Perhaps you'd like to dance?" Daniel asked. I wondered where Jim was and looked around. "I have to find Jim," I meekly protested. "He's over there," Daniel pointed. I looked. Jim was dancing between two gorgeous women, one of whom was dressed like a version of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Only she had a tail and long, claw-like fingernails. The other was dressed like a cheerleader with a big pentagram on a cropped t-shirt. I watched him dance as Daniel led me onto the dance floor. I didn't resist. Daniel was a great dancer. The floor was crowded, and we were forced to dance close together. I could feel the music pulsing through my body. I could feel Daniel's closeness. He smelled good of leather, oak, and musk. I looked around for Jim. I spotted him in the crowd, dancing with two other women. I felt Daniel's hand on my thigh as we danced. I felt really good at his touch, and I could feel the heat through my dress. It felt good. His hands roamed a little, over my hips, touching my body. "You're not wearing any underwear," he whispered in my ear. His breath was warm on my skin. The fact that he knew my secret was arousing, intoxicating. I couldn't help myself. "Is it bad?" I said tokenistically, looking into his eyes. His hand lay on the hem of my dress, and I felt him on my thigh. "Not at all." He laughed. His laugh was intoxicating. His hand slid under my dress. I should have stopped him, but in that moment his touch was arousing. I felt his hand caressing my body. I noticed people watching. I realized that the hem of my dress was partially pulled up so people could see what he was doing. I felt like my body was on display. I looked at Jim again. I saw him. He was rubbing himself against two different women. I saw him look at me. Then he lowered his gaze to my body. He smiled. I closed my eyes and let Daniel press himself against me. I could feel his breath on my neck. It felt good. The next moment, a woman pressed up against me from behind. She put her arms around my waist. I pressed myself against her again. Her breath also felt pleasant on my neck. I could feel her breasts pressing against my back. Her hands left my waist. She reached down and pulled up the hem of my skirt. I was sandwiched between Daniel and this strange woman. The skirt of my dress pulled up around my waist, and I was rubbing like I was enjoying it. I did. I felt free, sexy. The woman disappeared into the crowd. Her place was taken by a handsome man with red skin and horns. His hands groped my body as he pressed himself against him. I knew I should have stopped him, but the music, the smells, the warmth of his touch, I just kept dancing. The man behind me moved his hands to my breasts. He began to caress it. I looked back. I noticed that there were other women dancing topless. People were pressing against each other, kissing, rubbing into each other. The guy behind me started kissing my neck. I sighed. Daniel leaned over and kissed me on the lips. I kissed him back as he continued to play masterfully with my body. Somehow his shirt was unbuttoned. I could see his chiseled chest and abs. My hand lay on his chest. The muscles were hard and warm from my fingers. With his free hand, he took my hand and ran it down his body, bringing me to his dignity. I stroked it through his pants. The next thing I felt was Daniel's hands reaching for me. I felt good. The rhythm was pulsing and the air smelled like a walk in the woods. Daniel's hands reached the zipper of my dress. I could feel him slowly pulling it down. It seemed to take forever. I wanted to stop him. I wanted him to go faster. I felt fingers on my body. The heat was building inside me. I leaned back against the guy behind me, my dress completely unbuttoned. Daniel leaned down and kissed me. It was a slow, passionate kiss. Pulling away, he pulled the dress down my arms. It was now hanging from the top and bottom, bunching up around my waist. Daniel kissed me again. I felt the guy behind me unhook my bra. Without thinking, I shrugged it off and let it fall to the floor. He reached out and started playing with my breasts. I couldn't help it, the heat building up inside me. I almost lost my balance. The two men I was sandwiched between held me back. I looked to the side. Two women were dancing. Behind them stood a man sandwiched between the two women. One of them was stroking his body. The other woman was reaching for him, playing with his breasts. I looked around for Jim, but he was nowhere to be seen. I looked around again. One couple was having sex. Through the music, I could hear the sounds of sex. Another man was lying on his back, a woman caressing his body. Around me, people in various states of undress were still dancing. The music was still pulsing. Daniel gently lowered me onto my back and began to have sex with me. I looked up at his face. His eyes had narrowed to two slits, like cat eyes. I wondered for a moment why I hadn't noticed before that he wore contact lenses. "Do you like that?" whispered Daniel. "Yes," I said. "Tell me," he almost commanded. "Have sex with me," I asked. I looked around. All around me, people were engaged in various sexual activities. The room smelled of sex. I wondered briefly where Jim was. I looked and didn't realize who it was. Before I could think about it, another cock was near me. Then, when Daniel was done with me, another man was beside me. I looked over. It was Jim. He had a huge grin on his face. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up to daylight shining through the car window. I was sitting in the passenger seat. I blinked my eyes and looked around. Jim was asleep in the driver's seat. The parking lot was still empty. I looked toward the bar. There stood the dilapidated building I remembered. I felt my phone still in my hands. I looked to see what time it was. Looking closer, I noticed that I had 5 full-service bars. I looked at the building again. Had last night really happened? Where had everyone been? What had happened to the building? I sat down to gather my thoughts. As I sat, I realized that my whole body ached. I felt like I'd had sex all night long. I woke Jim up. He groaned and looked around. "What the hell?" he stammered. He looked up at me. "Are you okay?" I nodded. For a while, we sat in a daze. Not knowing what else to say, I said, "I have full service on my phone." He looked up. "Me too." We both continued to look around, not quite realizing where we stood. He looked at his phone again. "Well, I guess I should call roadside assistance." I thought for a moment, and then a thought occurred to me. "Try starting the car," I said. He pressed the start button and the car hummed like everything was fine. "That's good," he said in a confused voice. "Let's go home." I looked around. "Where's my purse?" I asked. We both looked around the car. Then we both looked at the dilapidated building. We stared at each other. I'll go look," he finally said. "No way," I replied. "I'll go with you." He nodded. We both got out of the car and headed for the door. It was ajar and swung open easily. Dust kicked up as the door slid open. The room was dark, and we stood still for a moment, letting our eyes adjust. As we peered into the darkness, our eyes adapted. On a dusty bar stool lay my purse and bra. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!